Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about something that sounds like a joke, but is actually the most serious crisis facing modern civilization. We're going to talk about dating, marriage, fertility rates, and why game theory predicts that most wealthy societies will collapse within the next 50 to 100 years. I know that sounds dramatic, but stick with me because by the end of this, you're going to understand why demography is destiny and why the dating choices people make today determine which civilizations survive. Let's start with a simple thought experiment. Imagine you have 5 men and 5 women. We'll rank them from 1 to 5 based on desirability, looks, intelligence, personality, resources, whatever criteria you want to use. In a perfectly rational world, how should they pair up? Well, the most desirable man, number 5, should marry the most desirable woman, also number 5. Then number 4 marries number 4. 3 marries 3. 2 marries 2. 1 marries 1. Perfect matching. Everyone gets a partner at their level. Everyone can have children. Society continues. This is what game theory calls a Nash equilibrium. It's the state where all players have maximized their outcome given what everyone else is doing. No one can improve their situation by changing their choice. But here's the problem. What if number 5 man tries to be greedy? What if he tries to sleep with all 5 women instead of settling down with number 5 woman? Well, the 5 woman sees what's happening. She realizes she's being played and she thinks, you know what? Number 4 man isn't that much worse than number 5. I'll just marry him instead. So now number 5 man has lost the best woman. And when number 4 woman sees this, she thinks the same thing. Number 5 woman made a good choice. I'll marry number 3 man. And it cascades down. If any man tries to maximize his outcome by playing the field, he ends up alone or stuck with the least desirable partner. The only way this works is through cooperation. Everyone agrees to stay in their lane. Number 5 marries number 5, 4 marries 4, and so on. In theory, this is how it should work. This is the Nash equilibrium. This is the rational strategy that maximizes outcomes for everyone. But here's the thing. In real life, nobody follows this rule. In real life, we choose to be suicidal. Let me tell you about an experiment. Imagine you ask people in their 30s who've been on the dating market for a decade to describe their minimum requirements for marriage. They're tired. Their parents are pestering them. They've given up on finding the one. What do men say? As long as she likes me and I'm attracted to her, I'm good. Men will settle for almost anything. Their requirements are incredibly low. What do women say? Something very different. If I don't love him, if I'm not even attracted to him, I need about $1 million a month. This isn't a joke. This is what actually happens when you ask this question. So what's going on? Why don't people follow the Nash equilibrium? Here's what actually happens in the real world. All the women want the same guy. Number 5. Maybe they'll settle for number 4, but 3, 2, and 1, they don't want them. Look around you. Look at billionaires like Elon Musk. How many children does he have with how many different women? Look at actors like Brad Pitt. How many women compete for his attention? And what about men, 3, 2, and 1? They watch Netflix. They watch porn. They play video games. They've given up on life. We call these people incels, involuntary celibates. They've given up and life has given up on them. So the entire competition is between men 5 and 4 for all the women. This is completely suicidal. This will lead to the death of humanity. So why are people behaving this way? Why aren't they being rational? The answer is they are being rational. But to understand why, you need to understand what game they're actually playing. They're not playing the procreation game. They're not even playing the sex game. They're playing the status game. People don't want to marry someone to have children. They want to marry someone so they can post pictures on Instagram and get likes. They want to walk in the mall with their partner and make others jealous. They want someone they can brag about. It's a game about status, not about sex or procreation. Even the least desirable woman thinks having kids is a pain. If I'm going to make that sacrifice, this guy better be good looking or rich. Otherwise, why would I bother? People are being perfectly rational, but only if you understand the game is about status, not reproduction. This is a crucial insight from game theory. To understand why people behave the way they do, you can't just look at what they're doing. You have to understand what game they think they're playing. In traditional societies, people were playing the survival game. How do I ensure my children survive? How do I protect my family from threats? In that game, having many children and building strong family alliances made perfect sense. In growing societies competing with rivals, people were playing the group survival game. How does our tribe, nation, civilization defeat others? In that game, arranged marriages and high fertility made sense, but in modern overpopulated, wealthy societies, people are playing the individual status game. How do I maximize my personal status and quality of life? In that game, holding out for the perfect partner and having few or no children makes perfect sense. The game has changed, so rational behavior has changed. The tragedy is that individually rational behavior leads to collectively suicidal outcomes. Now, this leads to an obvious question. If humans have been behaving like this throughout history, we wouldn't be here today. We'd have died out long ago. So clearly, the game hasn't always been like this. The game changes over time, according to what we call the superstructure of society. The superstructure is the big picture. Demographics, economics, culture, politics, religion, these factors together determine what game people are actually playing. Let me give you 3 examples of different superstructures and how they create different games. Superstructure 1, low population, low technology. Imagine a village of 200 people. They're poor. They don't have clean water or understand hygiene. Women frequently die in childbirth. There's low competition with other villages. What's the dating game here? There is no dating game. There might be marriage, but there's a lot of sex between different partners. Why? Because as a woman, the only way to ensure your child survives is if all the men in the village want to protect and nurture the child. And they'll do that if they believe the child might be theirs. So women sleep with multiple men to disguise paternity. This maintains social cohesion. Everyone has an incentive to care for all the children. This sounds shocking to modern ears, but it's actually a rational strategy given the superstructure. When infant mortality is high and you need community support to raise children, this system makes sense. Superstructure 2, growing population, medium technology. Now imagine a society of 10,000 to 20,000 people. They're growing in wealth. They have some technology, clean water, basic medicine, and importantly, they're in high competition with other societies around them. What's the dating game here? Again, there is no dating game. Instead, you have arranged marriages. Why? Because this society needs as many children as possible to compete with rival societies. So who cares who you love? You marry who your parents tell you to marry. You marry your childhood friend, and you have lots and lots of kids. Personal choice doesn't matter. What matters is demographic survival against competing societies. Think about most of human history. This is how it worked. Your parents arranged your marriage based on family alliances and economic considerations. Love was nice if it happened, but it wasn't the point. The point was having many children to work the land, to defend the territory, to ensure the family line continued. In a world of high child mortality and constant competition with rival groups, this made perfect sense. Superstructure. 3, overpopulation, high technology. This is the world we live in today, billions of people. Massive wealth, but also massive inequality. High technology means almost no women die in childbirth and almost all children survive. And there's a kind of equilibrium. Competition exists, but not total war. What's the dating game here? Now you finally have an actual dating game. Why? Because the odds of obtaining high status are very low. There are too many people competing for too few elite positions. And the only way to change your status is by marrying up. Dating becomes an opportunity to find someone better than your social circumstances would normally allow. It's a chance to climb the ladder. Think about what this means. In a small village, everyone knows everyone. Your marriage options are limited to people you've known your whole life. There's no mystery, no opportunity for radical status change through marriage. But in a city of millions, you could potentially meet anyone. That attractive person on the subway could be your ticket to a better life. That person at the bar could change your entire trajectory. So people spend years searching, hoping, waiting for that perfect match that will boost their status. Meanwhile, they're not having children because having children with someone beneath you feels like a wasted opportunity. And this is why you have decreasing fertility rates. Because everyone's holding out for someone better. Everyone's playing the status game instead of the procreation game. The demographic collapse. Let's look at what's actually happening in the world today. In China, the fertility rate is about 0. That means the average woman has 1 child. For replacement, just to maintain the current population, you need 2. 1 children per woman. 5 years ago, China's fertility rate was 7. Now it's 0. The trend is accelerating downward, and this isn't just China. It's happening everywhere wealthy, educated women have choices. Governments are trying everything to convince women to have more children. South Korea pays people. Various countries offer incentives. Nothing works. Why? Because people don't want money. They want status. And status is a zero-sum game. Money can be created infinitely. But status positions are limited. When you have overpopulation and too many people competing for too few high-status positions, fertility rates collapse. And there's nothing you can do about it. The moment you give women choice, they choose to improve their lives by marrying someone better rather than having children with someone at their level. The pattern throughout history, if you look at history, the best indicator that a society is about to collapse is when wealthy, educated women refuse to have children. This happened to the Romans. This happened to many empires. This is happening right now in America, Britain, Europe, China, Japan, South Korea. These superstructures represent the life cycle of a civilization. Birth, maturation, collapse. Every civilization goes through this process, and there's no way around it. The power of game theory is that by studying one aspect, the dating game, you can figure out the superstructure of the civilization. And once you understand that, you can predict where it came from and where it's going. Let's look at a map of the world, colored by fertility rates. Red areas have above replacement fertility, above 2, 1 children per woman. Dark red areas in Central Africa have fertility rates of 6 or 7. Why? Because Africa is in that growing society phase with medium technology. Lots of people die, lots of competition, so families have many children to survive. But look at the wealthy parts of the world. North America, Europe, East Asia. The fertility rate is collapsing. North America and Europe are somewhat okay because of immigration. Even though their native women aren't having children, they can import people for their labor force. But East Asia is screwed. China is at 0. But the worst is South Korea. South Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the world. Between 6 and 8. They will probably be gone in 50 years. It's so bad that restaurants have signs saying no dogs and no kids. They think children are a problem. These societies will probably collapse within 100 years. The solution governments are choosing is immigration. But this causes massive social disruption because people don't like outsiders. Who will rule the world? If you want to know who will rule the world in 100 years, just figure out which societies wealthy, educated women choose to have children. That society will dominate. If you do this analysis, you get a really disturbing answer. Look at a graph with per capita GDP on one axis and fertility rate on the other. The United States is wealthy but below replacement rate. They don't care because they can import immigrants. China is somewhere in the middle, but with low fertility. Angola is poor but high fertility. The country most likely to dominate for the next 50 years? Israel. Israel is the only wealthy Western high-tech society where women choose to have more than 2 kids on average. I know what you're thinking, but Israel only has 9 million people. It's in the middle of a desert. Everyone hates Israel. I understand. But if you just analyze the game objectively from a game theory perspective, Israel has a major advantage over everyone else. Now, it's possible that other societies will change their fertility rates as conditions change. But given the current state of things, Israel's growth trajectory is very high. So why is Israel different from everyone else? Because the world hates them. Because they think they're different and must unite to survive. In Israel, fertility is status. If you're a woman and you give birth to many kids, that means you love Israel. That means you're doing what you can in this war for survival. You're a patriot. This has to do with religion and national identity. The West has not only created a dating game where women choose based on status, but the Western world has also given up on religion and embraced materialism. What's valued in the West? Not patriotism or love of family or religious duty. It's Instagram followers, YouTube subscribers, money. That's all that matters. Given the current state of events, it's very hard for the Western world and for China to survive the next 50 years. Let's look at South Korea in detail because it's the worst case scenario and probably a preview of what's coming elsewhere. Right now, South Korea still has a working age population. But look at the projections. By 2040, you have a huge dependent population, mostly retirees, and almost no children. Your working age population is shrinking rapidly. By 2060, your working population has decreased by 50%. You have masses of retirees and almost no young people. By 2080, you have a zombie society where the vast majority of people are over 65 and there are almost no children. No one works. The economy has collapsed. If things stay the same, South Korea will be dead by 2150 at the latest. But we know from history that societies don't die naturally. Wars happen. Economic crises happen. These accelerate the decline. I'd be surprised if South Korea makes it past 2040 as a functional nation state. You need working age people to run an economy. You also need them to fight wars. If North Korea threatens South Korea, most of the adult population will be elderly. South Korea cannot fight a war. Their prospects are utterly hopeless. And there's nothing South Korea can do about this. Why? Because South Korea is an extremely materialistic society where the only way to get ahead is by making a lot of money. If you're middle class in South Korea, it makes no sense to have 3 kids. It makes sense to have 1 kid and put all your resources into that 1 kid, hoping they pass the college examination, get into a good university, and get a good job at Samsung. The incentives all point toward fewer children, and there's no way to change that without fundamentally changing the superstructure of society. The West faces a similar problem, just a few decades behind South Korea. Wealthy, educated women are choosing not to have children, or they're having 1 child late in life. The replacement rate requires 1 children per woman. Most Western countries are well below that. The stopgap solution has been immigration. Bring in people from higher fertility countries to fill the labor shortage and maintain the tax base. But this creates its own problems. Cultural conflict, political backlash, social fragmentation. The very things that make people willing to fight and sacrifice for their country are being eroded. You can't tell people that national identity is evil and backwards for their entire lives, then suddenly ask them to fight and die for their nation when you need them. You can conscript people, you can put them in uniform, but you can't make them care. You can't make them sacrifice. And a military of people who don't care cannot win wars. Now, you might be thinking, okay, interesting demographic trends, but why does this matter to me personally? It matters because everything else flows from this. Economics, politics, culture, geopolitics, all of it is downstream from demographics. When you have a shrinking, aging population, you have economic stagnation or decline. Who's going to buy products? Who's going to start businesses? Who's going to innovate? When you have a dependency crisis with many retirees and few workers, you have massive strain on government budgets. Pensions, healthcare, social services all become unsustainable. When you have low fertility among your native population and high immigration to compensate, you have social fragmentation and political instability. When you have a society that can't defend itself because it has no young men willing to fight, you become vulnerable to external threats. Everything connects back to this fundamental question: are people having children? And right now, in every wealthy high-tech society, except Israel, the answer is no. Not enough. Not nearly enough. So can this trend be reversed? Can wealthy societies avoid demographic collapse? The honest answer is probably not, without fundamentally changing the superstructure that created the problem. You can't fix a status game problem with money. South Korea has tried throwing money at the problem. It doesn't work. You can't fix it with policy tweaks. France has tried every family policy imaginable. Still below replacement rate. The problem is structural. As long as the game people are playing is the status game, as long as having children conflicts with status competition, fertility will remain low. To change this, you need to change what people value. You need to make fertility itself a source of status, like in Israel. But that requires either strong religious identity or strong national identity, or both. And the entire trend of modern Western society has been to undermine both religion and national identity in the name of individualism and cosmopolitanism. So you're stuck. The very values that make you a modern, liberal, wealthy society are the values that guarantee your demographic collapse. This isn't new. We've seen this pattern before. The Roman Empire went through exactly this. As Rome became wealthy and sophisticated, the upper classes stopped having children. They focused on luxury, on status, on individual pleasure. Roman emperors tried everything to boost fertility among Roman citizens. Tax breaks, legal penalties for childlessness, public campaigns. Nothing worked. Eventually, Rome had to rely more and more on barbarian immigrants for its army and labor force, which worked for a while, until it didn't. The civilization that conquered the Mediterranean collapsed not through external conquest, but through internal demographic decline. Sound familiar? So what should you take away from all this? First, understand that individual choices aggregate into civilizational outcomes. The personal decisions people make about dating, marriage, and children determine which societies survive. You might think your personal choice about whether to have kids doesn't matter in the grand scheme, but multiply your choice by millions of people making similar choices and you get civilizational collapse. This is the essence of game theory. Individual rational choices can lead to collective disaster. Everyone acting in their own self-interest creates an outcome that's terrible for everyone. Second, recognize that you're living through a historical transition. The demographic structure that's existed for the past few generations is collapsing. Something new is coming. We don't know exactly what yet. This isn't just an abstract academic point. This will affect your life in concrete ways. Economic stagnation as populations age, political instability as societies fragment, geopolitical shifts as some countries collapse while others rise. The world your grandchildren inherit will look radically different from the world today. And demographics is the biggest driver of that change. Third, if you're young and thinking about your own life choices, understand the game you're playing. Are you playing the status game or the procreation game? Because they're increasingly incompatible. If you're playing the status game, trying to maximize your personal achievement, your career success, your lifestyle quality, then having children, especially multiple children, works against your goals. Children are expensive, time-consuming, and they limit your flexibility. But if you're playing the procreation game, if you value family continuity, if you want to pass on your values and genes, if you care about the survival of your culture or civilization, then you need to have children. Probably at least 3 to contribute above replacement rate. You can't have it both ways. Modern society makes you choose, and most people are choosing status over procreation. Fourth, don't assume the current system is stable or sustainable. It's not. Societies with aging, shrinking populations face massive economic and political challenges. Plan accordingly. If you're in a country with collapsing demographics, what does that mean for your retirement, for your property values, for your economic opportunities? These aren't abstract questions. They have real implications for how you should invest, where you should live, what skills you should develop. And fifth, pay attention to demographics when thinking about geopolitics and economics. The countries with healthy demographics will have major advantages. The countries with collapsing demographics will face crisis after crisis. If you're thinking about where to invest, where to build a business, where to raise a family, demographics should be a major consideration. A country with a young, growing population has a very different future from a country with an aging, shrinking population. Let me get more specific about the personal choices you might face. If you're a woman in a modern wealthy society, you're facing an impossible situation. The society has told you that you can have it all: career, status, personal fulfillment, and also family. But the math doesn't work. To have a successful career, especially in competitive fields, you need to focus on it during your 20s and early 30s. This is when you build your foundation, when you establish yourself, when you climb the ladder. But these are also your peak fertility years. Every year after 30, your fertility declines. By 35, it's significantly harder to have children. By 40, it's very difficult, so you have to choose career or family, status or children. You can maybe do both if you're exceptional and lucky, but for most people, it's one or the other. And society has spent your entire life telling you that career and status are what matter, that having children young is a waste of your potential, that you should establish yourself first. So most educated women delay having children. And then many find they can't have them, or can only have one. And the fertility rate collapses. If you're a man, you face a different set of challenges. Women are increasingly selective, especially educated women with options. They're holding out for the top tier of men. If you're not in that top tier, the dating market is brutal. You can improve yourself, get in better shape, develop your career, build your social skills. But there's still a massive imbalance. The most desirable men have abundant options. Everyone else is scrambling for scraps. So many men are simply checking out. Porn and video games are easier than competing in a rigged game. This is rational from an individual perspective, but catastrophic from a societal perspective. There's also a deeper cultural dimension to all this. Modern wealthy societies have systematically undermined everything that used to motivate people to have children. Religious duty? Most people aren't religious anymore, or their religion is so watered down it doesn't actually demand anything. Family obligation? We've spent decades telling people that family obligations are oppressive, that you should live for yourself. National identity? That's been labeled as xenophobic and backwards. We're all supposed to be citizens of the world now. Cultural continuity? Modern education teaches people to be ashamed of their culture, to see it as problematic and worthy of criticism rather than preservation. So what's left? Just individual hedonism. Maximize your pleasure, minimize your pain, live for yourself. And in that framework, having children makes no sense. They're expensive, exhausting, and they limit your freedom. This is why financial incentives don't work. You can't bribe people into having children with tax breaks and subsidies. Because the issue isn't money, it's meaning. People have children when they believe it matters, when they see it as fulfilling a duty to something larger than themselves, to God, to family, to nation, to culture. Take away those larger meanings and people just optimize for their individual happiness, which means fewer children or no children. There's also a fascinating hypocrisy among the elite on this issue. The people running society, the politicians, the corporate leaders, the cultural influencers, many of them have children, often multiple children. They clearly value family, but they promote a culture that undermines family formation for everyone else. They promote individualism, careerism, status competition. They make children seem like an expensive burden rather than a blessing. Why? Maybe because it's in their interest. If everyone else is too busy competing for status to have children, there's less competition for their own children. Their kids will inherit a world with fewer rivals. Or maybe it's just hypocrisy. They can afford nannies and private schools. So having children doesn't limit their careers the way it limits normal people's careers. So they don't realize how their policies and cultural messaging affect others. Either way, there's a massive disconnect between what the elite do personally and what they promote culturally. And the result is demographic collapse for everyone except the elite. Look, I know this is uncomfortable. Nobody wants to hear that their society is on a path to collapse. Nobody wants to think about these trade-offs between personal freedom and civilizational survival. But the math is the math. Game theory is game theory. Demographics are demographics. When wealthy, educated women choose not to have children, your civilization has maybe 2 or 3 generations left. That's what history shows us. That's what the data shows us. You can try to paper over it with immigration. You can try to prop it up with policy. But fundamentally, a society that doesn't reproduce is a society that's dying. The question isn't whether this is fair or right or good. The question is just what's true. And the truth is that the dating game being played in modern wealthy societies is suicidal. People are being rational actors in a game that leads to collective extinction. That's the power and the tragedy of game theory. So here we are. The dating crisis that will end civilization. It sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. The most important question for any civilization is, Are people having children? And for most wealthy societies today, the answer is no. This isn't a problem that will manifest tomorrow. It's a slow motion collapse that takes decades, but it's already locked in. The demographics of 2050 are largely determined by the births happening today. And those births aren't happening, at least not at replacement rate, which means shrinking populations, aging societies, economic crisis, political instability, and ultimately civilizational collapse. Some societies will navigate this better than others. Israel seems positioned to survive. Maybe some other societies will figure out how to change their superstructure, change the game people are playing. But for most, the trajectory is clear. And it's not optimistic. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And remember, the personal is political, and the political is demographic. The choices you make about your own life are part of a larger pattern that determines which civilizations survive. See you in the next one.